So just to mention to everyone, we're going to be beginning at about 5 past, as Chris has just said.
So we're live now.
Yep. Right, as we're at 5 past, I will begin now. So yes, good evening, comrades, and welcome to meeting titled Socialism or Barbarism, Defeating the Far Right, which is a public meeting hosted by the Grassroots Left Slate. And I'll begin by saying I don't think it's a particularly unique observation to say that we're living through a period which is characterised by the rise of the far right. At the ballot box, Reform UK is at present the most likely party to defeat the Labour government at the next election. And, with their very plausible victory in the Gorton Denton by-election, the latest sign of their rise. On the street, we're also seeing a rise in semi-organised expressions of far-right politics outside hotels, RNLI buildings, and against mass movements for the liberation of Palestine, trans justice, and climate justice, among others. As socialists, we understand that this is a fundamental failure of capitalism and the political order that presides over it. As capitalism and its representatives in Westminster lose all credibility, people are turning towards radical solutions. For some of us, we understand that this is a question of system change, replacing the system that produces soaring house prices, mounting war, and political chaos with a socialist society run by the interests of all, run by all in the interests of human need. For others, however, the real cause of these problems are obscured by attacks on the most vulnerable and oppressed in our society. Whether we're talking about reform or, frankly, the rising street fascist movement, the far right must be defeated. And I think the point is prefacing this meeting is that we need both a militant mass anti-fascist movement and a mass socialist party capable of providing a high political expression of and support for anti-fascist politics. In that context, tomorrow morning, myself and comrades from across the country are going to Manchester City Centre to counter Britain First, who are attempting to march through Manchester city centre and spread vile racist hatred in the middle of one of the biggest cities in this country. There are two protests going on, one of which I'll be attending personally, which is starting at Sackville Street at 11:45, and others are meeting at Piccadilly Gardens at 11:30. I think rather than cowering as fascists attempt to launder their reputations and spread their bile against immigrants, LGBTQIA plus people, trade unionists and others, a grassroots mobilisation effort across not just Manchester but the whole Northwest has been put together to confront this threat. I hope to see many of you on the streets tomorrow. And in relation to the need for a mass socialist party, the grassroots left slate seeks to put in the building blocks to transform your party into exactly that. A party of the whole left, built upon vibrant, well-resourced branches and uncompromising socialist politics, is the vehicle we need to complement and extend support towards a growing grassroots anti-fascist movement. And on that basis, if you haven't done already, we urge you to vote for the two grassroots left candidates in your region and the public office holder candidates, Grace Lewis and Zarah Sultana, along with kind of endorsed candidates who are not part of the slate. Along with this, signing up to the grassroots left slate via our website, confirming that you have voted and get involved with spreading our vision of maximum member democracy is the way in which we can win the your party we need. Today, we will be discussing how to tackle the far right with socialist politics. Joining me are grassroots left supporter and socialist alternative member Tom Costello, our two grassroots left candidates for the Northwest, Chloe Braddock and Haifa Alkhanshali, and Zarah Sultana, your party MP and one of our candidates for the public office holder position. Finally, we will also have a contribution from Nahella Ashraf, who is a Stand Up to Racism organiser. Each will have 10 minutes to speak before 30 minutes for questions and points and response from yourselves, those watching. Before we have 15 minutes where all speakers will sum up and answer questions. As has been mentioned in the chat, this meeting is recorded and is being live streamed to YouTube. So, of course, factor that into considerations about your contributions. To begin, I'll start with Tom.
Okay, yeah, I think that's worked now. Okay, so thanks, Stephen, and thanks to Zara, Chloe, Haifa, Nyla, and all the comrades who've taken their Friday evening off to come along tonight. I'm really happy to have this opportunity to speak along lots of excellent comrades who were part of Grassroots Left, because this is about building a your party, which, as Stephen was just saying, is clearly socialist, is consistently taking the side of the working class, fighting against all oppression and basing itself on struggle. Like was just said, my name is Tom. I'm an organizer with Socialist Alternative based near Liverpool, and I'm also active in the Your Party Knowsley proto branch. So I think just to kind of get into it, I don't think I need to massively retrace over everything that's been happening in the last couple of years, because I think we'll generally know. We've seen the offensive of Trump and the Trump 2.0 regime in the US, the rise of right-wing populism, including to government in a number of countries around the world, lots of countries. And in Britain, it was always going to find expression in some way, and now it's found expression primarily, of course, through Reform, who are currently leading in the polls. But alongside that and connected to that, we're seeing the far right mobilizing on the streets and feeling more emboldened than they ever have before. So, of course, there'll be Britain First on the streets of Manchester tomorrow, but also, of course, Tommy Robinson and his kind of thugs who've been touring across the country. And so, we need to take a moment and think what kind of movement is actually needed to push this back, but also to end the system which is creating them in the first place. We saw I think it was September last year, Tommy Robinson's Unite the Kingdom rally, which was big, like we have to acknowledge that it was a big demonstration. And it also significantly outnumbered the counter demonstration, the anti-racist counter demonstration, which was very unfortunate. But it's also not inevitable that that has to happen and has to keep happening, and it can be done differently. The Together Alliance demonstration on the 28th of March in London is an opportunity to start turning that around, to start to change the picture. And it's a chance to show that we can outnumber the racists and we can drive them back into the hole, that they came out of. And I think your party has an extremely important role to play in that process. It's of course crucial that as many your party members as possible go to the march in London on the 28th of March, and also to the demo tomorrow against Britain First. But I think the main thing, and this is really important to restate, that it shouldn't be about your party members all just going as individual your party members. It's about having an organized presence as your party and putting the stamp of our socialist politics on the movement, because that is what has been lacking, I think, for too long. So one thing that I think we really, really need is a your party-led socialist bloc on these demonstrations. That includes your party banners. There have been banners printed by proto branches all across the country, bringing those down to London, flags, chants, but also demands which point towards a political alternative to the poison that the far right is putting forward, as well as the capitalist elite, what they're churning out at the moment. So having a well-organized your party bloc with placards carrying demands on them, things like rent controls, not racism, the racists won't lower your bills, nationalize energy in the big corporations to fight the cost of living crisis, blaming the billionaires, not the migrants, is extremely important, because it's about not just countering them where they feel bold enough to take to the streets, as important as that is, but it's also providing concrete answers to the problems that working class people face. So we can actually not just push reform and the far right back, but also undercut their growth, and to show whose side we're actually on, and whose side they're on. And not only that, the main thing is that it's important from that point of view, from the point of view of fighting the right. But it'd also be good for your party, after an extremely difficult launch process, which I'm not going to retrace over in every way it's taken shape. But to have an opportunity to turn your party outwards, to turn it towards struggle, showing your parties on the streets is really desperately needed, I actually think, for YP at the moment. And it's also an opportunity to show what it would look like for your party to not just be another Labour Party Mark II. Of course, doing this kind of work shouldn't all be on the shoulders of your party. The trade union movement has a crucial role to play in it as well. And I think that means the unions doing much more than what many of them still unfortunately do, which is to kind of, stick their logo on a leaflet maybe once or twice a year, and also to outsource the campaigning against racism to other organizations, which can be a start, but, we would know is nowhere near good enough. It's about the unions taking a lead themselves, whether that's providing stewards, so anti-fascist and anti-racist can be kept safe from the far right. But also it's about putting the demands of the working class movement at the centre of these demonstrations against fascism and against racism, rather than those demands being marginalised to the sidelines. Because we know that racism is used by the bosses to divide the working class. So the working class movement has to have a clear answer, to those realities. Also, pushing back racism is not a separate task to building this new socialist party, because what it's about getting to the roots, getting to the roots of why the right's on the rise now, which is in the capitalist system. It's the fact that we live under a system where a tiny handful of billionaires dominate the planet and our lives by extension. And because of that, they will use things like racism, sexism, misogyny, transphobia, anti-migrant ideas, and they're used and they're weaponized as a divide and rule tactic. And that's why ultimately, as socialists, we understand that without getting rid of this system, and taking down the billionaires, capitalism will find new ways to do divide and rule, for as long as it suits them. That's also why we can't ally or see ourselves as allying with discredited establishment parties like Labour to fight the far right, because those parties and the Labour government are the ones who aren't only echoing what the far right is obviously saying. We saw Keir Starmer talking about an island of strangers, but it's also the policies of those parties that continue to drive the rise of the far right. And also, we can't have any kind of hope that things are just going to return back to normal. This is the new normal. This is what capitalism does, and so we need a new answer. So this is about building a party which is truly independent of the bosses, their money, their influence. A party which empowers and politically organizes working class people, and actually, in large part, it's not the most fundamental thing, but in large part, it's because of the absence, because of the lack of independent working class parties of struggle, which has actually helped the right to kind of pose themselves as being anti-establishment. Of course, we understand that they're not, but it's about building something that's genuinely anti-establishment and on the side of the working class. Using these events as an opportunity to do that. So just before I finish, I want to say a few things about grassroots left. Socialist Alternative is fully in support of grassroots left. We're helping to get the vote out and get a majority for grassroots left on the central executive committee in your party. And I want to say a few things about what grassroots left has to do with fighting the far right, because the kinds of things that grassroots left is campaigning for and demanding and running for, so things like sharing the data, recognition to the proto branches, having a genuinely democratic decision-making conference, election of officers, and the right of recall. These things are actually necessary, a necessary part of building a movement to push back the right. It's not just because democracy is a nice idea. It's because it's a necessary ingredient to building the kind of fight that we do have to wage against the far right and against the capitalist system which creates them. So if we're in a situation where we continue having branches that don't have power, don't have recognition, if we continue to be in a situation where conference decisions are being reversed or they're attempting to reverse them, attempts to make our membership passive rather than in control, we're not going to be able to make your party the party that it needs to be, which is a party based on struggle. That's the only way we can, take on and get rid of the billionaire class. If we don't have things like dual membership, a basic democratic right for socialists to support your party, to be part of your party, then the kind of unity and solidarity needed to make your party a success is threatened. So, it's not an exaggeration to say that this is a vote between two visions for your party. It's not about do you back Jeremy or do you back Zarah as individuals. It's about do we want Labour 2.0, as the many is arguing for, or something fundamentally quite different, a class struggle based and socialist party. So I would echo what others, I'll presume, will say through this meeting, that I would urge everyone to cast their vote for grassroots left in the CEC elections and make your party the party that we need and deserve going forward. So thanks.
Thanks very much, Tom, for a really, really clear and traversal of so many different subjects there. I'll next move on to Chloe.
Hi everyone, my name is Chloe Braddock. If you don't know me, I'm running in the Northwest on the grassroots left slate alongside Haifa. I'm a socialist organizer of several years. I've got a background particularly in the tenant union movement, as well as in anti-imperialist organizing against an arms factory. But most relevant to tonight, I also have some experience organizing against fascism, mobilizing to confront the far right on the streets. And I've got a couple of different experiences that I think are particularly formative in that. One was London in 2022, when Tommy Robinson came with about 20,000 back then. They only had 20,000 in comparison to last year's 200,000. And they aimed to march to Whitehall. And there were about 50 of us in quite a radical bloc. And I'm proud to say that we did stop them from getting to Whitehall, but it was quite a terrifying experience surrounded by hundreds of police and seeing thousands of the far right march past, and at one point try to rush towards us and attack us. It wasn't all bad. I did get to see a Chelsea fan pull a Nazi salute and then fall down in the street. That was good, but overall, a scary but productive day. And the other experience I think is pretty formative, and I think for all of us, for our whole movement, and indeed for the movement of the far right as well, was August 2024, when they were marching across the country, essentially trying to get pogroms going and spreading terror in working class communities all up and down this land. I was based in Southampton at the time, and on that Wednesday, where the far right were going to come out all across the country, I'm proud to say that we brought out over 600 people into the street to confront their measly 12 at that time. And that itself, although it was a terrifying moment and one that I hope that we never repeat in this country, that itself felt like a good moment where we had hundreds of people on our side locally and across the country, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people stood up, unified, and chased these bastards off the street, basically. But there is a criticism to be leveled there, which is that we haven't been able to bring out such crowds either before or after. We had success on that in that moment, and there was some triumphalism, but we need to be serious and say that we failed to build upon that success. Something that I notice is that hundreds of people came out on that day, but I didn't see many of those people either before or after in the various anti-fascist demos that had to continue being called because the far right kept on showing up. And unfortunately, they kept on showing up in larger and larger numbers as they have done. And that's a real concern. That's something that we need to ask ourselves why this is happening, why we're failing to bring out equal or greater numbers, and why, as Tom mentioned, back in the late part of last year, they had 200,000 in London, we had barely 20,000. So we need to think about how things like Cable Street in 1936, which is often referenced in our movement, happened. Cable Street and the success there, kicking Oswald Mosley out of London, didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of decades and decades of consistent, ambitious, proactive organizing amongst the working class by trade unionists, by communists and socialists, by a whole cross-section of our movement working to unify the working class of London. And that resulted in a great success that we look back upon proudly. But we have to understand what they did successfully and why they were able to build that kind of solidarity, the broad solidarity across the working class that led to such success. They had a strong class-based politics, right? They had strong trade unions that were not simply, as Tom said, putting their logo on a couple of leaflets every year, but were integral parts of organizing to confront fascism across Britain and across Europe and the whole world at that time. And the socialist movement at that time was presenting a real vision for the future. And it was presenting a vision for how we should defend one another as the working class, because there are across Europe examples, as there are today across the world, of the results of fascism, of genocide and repression and terror from the state and on the streets. And they had to organize proactively to confront that. And that's something that we have to take after today. With this party, we have an opportunity to put forward that strong, ambitious, class-based politics and a socialist vision for the future, and criticism of capitalism and its failures. Something that the far right have success in doing is presenting themselves as an insurgent political force that represents some kind of meaningful change, a meaningful break with the present way of doing things. And of course, they don't really represent that. Nigel Farage is essentially going to do Thatcherism 2.0. But for many people, they're perceived as representing a change, and people are desperate for change. And unfortunately, our movement is often not perceived as representing a vision for change, a vision for a socialist future. We too often align with groups like the Labour Party, as Tom said, who represent the opposite of that, who represent everything that's gone wrong over the past decades and that people are so angry about. So we have to put forward this vision for the future that can mobilize our class, that can unite our class behind a common political program. We also have to do work at a local level all across the country, everywhere in the country. And that doesn't just mean in Manchester and in London. That means organizing in small towns as well, organizing in rural areas, in the places where the far right often have the most success and where working class communities are left pretty much stranded under siege with flags going up on lampposts and feeling intimidated by the fascist threat. So we have to do that work at a local level, and we have to empower our branches to be able to go out and do that. We have to be giving them the funding for room hire, the funding for basic things like buying a ladder so that you can go out and take down the flags, right? And we have to be giving them access to data as well and recognition so that they can draw upon the thousands of people all across our country who have signed up to this party so that they can mobilize in a much broader way to go out and do those things like taking down the flags, like working in the communities and building that solidarity that's so important. We can't assume that the strong politics that I speak of will mobilize people on its own. We have to integrate our party into working class communities at a very deep level. We have to dig trenches in our society to defend our class, to defend each other. And of course, we have to work through the institutions of our class and of class struggle as well. The trade unions, right? The trade unions must take a central role in organizing against the enemy, as they have in the past. They have to do more than they are doing, and we have to work through them. We have to empower the rank and file to be able to do that. And your party needs to have a different kind of approach to the trade unions, where we go in to the rank and file and push for change in that way, and push the rank and file to call for their unions to be more militant organs of class struggle rather than taking this kind of affiliation model that the Labour Party has, which unfortunately has not been very productive in this way. And we have to unite all of the social movements, the Palestine Solidarity movement, which is under threat as much as any of us are from the far right, because they show up to intimidate Palestine Solidarity demos and they try to drive us off the street. And all of our social movements are equally under threat. And this is the thing that we have to center in our politics, is the fact that all of us are under threat. We all have a common enemy. We all have a common interest in standing up to this enemy. We have to build solidarity on that basis, on the basis that fascism must be stopped, because if it's not, fascism will stop us all, as Fred Hampton said. So that solidarity is essential, and the work of our party is in unifying all of our movements and unifying the whole working class to defend itself in a militant fashion. And finally, we have to recognize that the battle for the streets is not the only one that we have to fight. We have to fight a battle in the halls of power as well. We have to stop reform from getting into power, and that doesn't just mean electoral pacts. It also means doing things like organizing towards the potential for a general strike, as in Italy and in Portugal recently, that can bring a government to its knees, that can stop something like what's happening in America right now in its tracks. A general strike is the way to stop fascism in its tracks. The cat push in Germany in the 1920s showed that. The predecessors of the Nazis came to power, and they were brought down by a militant mass mobilization across Germany. And that's something that we have to keep in mind as a historical example to draw upon, and something that we have to build our party to do. And that's what the grassroots left will do if we win a majority. We will fight for a party that is militant, that takes this struggle seriously, and that seeks to unify the whole of the working class and the oppressed against fascism, and will give the branches the resources that they need to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. Again, a fantastic kind of exploration of your own experiences and of the history of anti-fascist struggle across the world. So next will be Haifa.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Haifa, and like Chloe said, running for CEC on the grassroots left slate alongside Chloe. So obviously, if you can tell from my accents, born and raised Scouser. So as you know, us Scousers have a history of being different, let's say, and standing together. So I just want to thank you all for coming and thank you all for having me as well. So we're meeting at a very serious political point. Across Britain, the far right are gathering and they're regrouping and they are growing. Reform are rising in the polls and Labour's competing on who can be the toughest on migrants. And fascist organisations like Britain First are trying to come on our streets again. But the thing is, with the Northwest, with Manchester, with Liverpool and all cities across the UK, we have a history, and the history is when fascists come to our city, we answer, and we need to stop them dead in the tracks like we're going to do tomorrow. Now, we have to be clear on one thing. The danger isn't just Britain's First turning up with flags and being their usual selves. The danger is the political climate that actually makes them feel bold, makes them feel untouchable, makes them feel empowered. That's the main danger here. When reform scapegoat migrants for housing crisis that are caused by landlords and underfunding, when Labour talk about crackdowns and control, and when asylum seekers are treated as a threat rather than human beings just fleeing war and devastation, that creates oxygen for the far right. And fascism doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It feeds on economic insecurity, isolation, and fear. And mainstream parties, mainstream media thrive on this and build on that language. And we need to ensure that we stop it dead in its tracks, especially when we don't have the mainstream media on our side. And that's why your party will be on the front line. We will be there tomorrow. We will be there, and on the 20th of March, we will be there fighting on the actual ground, not just talk. We are walking the walk, basically. We're not just going to sit at home like Labour do in their mansions, like Tories do, like Reforms do. They sit in their mansions. We're actually on the ground, but we've got our feet on the floor. And that's why we're offering a completely different types of politics. We're rooted in the actual working class. We're rooted in solidarity. We're rooted in anti-racism. We're rooted in anti-Zionism. We're rooted in anti-imperialism. We are for the working class. And as I said, I'm a Scouser, so I'll speak about my city. So in Liverpool, not too long ago, we had UKIP trying to come. And the last march UKIP tried to do in Liverpool, they tried to do a march through the city centre. The police approved it, but we didn't approve it. The people did not approve it. We did not let them walk their route. We had people coming from all across the Northwest to support us. It wasn't just Scousers, it was everyone across the Northwest that came. They ended up circling St George's Hall 3 times before they left and gave up. And that's what we're going to try and do tomorrow. We're not going to let them walk their route because we can't let fear and hate go through the streets of Manchester. Another thing, when years and years ago, when Tommy Robertson tried to come to Liverpool, we didn't even let him come out of the train station. We never let him get out of Lime Street. And that's what the power of solidarity, the power of people standing together means. The city was clear when that happened. You are not welcome here. Racists are not welcome here. And that's what we need to make it clear. And that didn't happen by accident. It happened because trade unions, community groups, students, Muslims, anti-racist, socialists, we all stood together side by side. And that's what matters. Unity matters. And we need it again tomorrow against Britain First. The far right have managed to grow so much because they've had that power to do so, and we need to take that power back. And it's our power. We need to show them that they are not the majority. They are the minority. We are the majority. There's a amazing chant we say at the Palestine protests, and it's we the people have the power, because we do, and we need to remember that we have that power, and we have it when we stand together. We've been taught from years and years and years ago that we're powerless, that we can't do anything, that we're just powerless. But it's actually so false, and they've made us believe that because they want us to feel like that and they want us to conform to what they want. And it's important that we don't do that. It's important we stay together, we stay strong, and we stay united. And our anti-fascist doesn't just stop at city boundary. We've seen over nearly 2.5 years, basically, the growth of the Palestine movement, hundreds of thousands marching week after week, month after month. The movement has been smeared, attacked, policed, but it's held firm and it's stayed strong till today. And we all should be proud of that, because we've all done that ourselves and we've all stayed strong together. Because standing with Palestine standing with Palestine is standing against fascism. It's standing against racism. We oppose militarism, we oppose racism, and we're proudly anti-Zionist, and we are proud of that. We challenge the same politics that fuel division at home. Anti-imperialism, anti-Zionism, anti-fascist are not separate causes, they're all the same. So if we want to defeat the far right, we must also challenge the wars and the economic injustice that create this despair and separation. So when we win, and we will win, your party needs to be a party that is on the streets against fascism, building a Palestine movement, defending migrants and refugees, fighting against cuts and defending the working class, and is putting forward a case that is for a totally different world and an amazing future. And we can't let the fear and the hate divide the working class communities, because that's what the far right want. They want us to be divided. They want our neighbours to turn against us. They want Muslims against non-Muslims. They want migrants against locals. They want worker against worker. And that's not what we want. We want unity, and we're here to stay together. So we answer that in unity, and that's what we need to do. So tomorrow, when Britain First show up, they need to see what Tommy Robinson saw in Liverpool a few years back. They need to see what UKIP saw. They need to see a city that refused to be divided. And we must not let fear take root. We must not let hate be normalised, and we must stay united, and we must stay strong. And even beyond tomorrow, we must keep building. We must keep building in the workplace. We must keep building in communities, in branches, in Palestine movements, in all across movements across the world, across the city, across the country, in trade unions, in anti-racist coalitions, because defeating the far right and fascism isn't just one day job. It's building the power for a long term. And we've done it before, and we can do it again. We stand together, and we will defeat the far right, and they will retreat if we stay together. So we need to build a party that's worthy of that tradition, a party that's bold, a party that's anti-racist, a party that's anti-imperialism, a party that's anti-Zionist, a party that's rooted in the working class solidarity and unafraid to fight for a completely different future. And when they try and march, we will block them. When they try to grandstand, we'll deny them the stage. And when they try and divide us, we'll stand closer together. And spirit matters now more than ever, because we're not facing just one demonstration. It's an attempt to normalize hate. It's an attempt to normalize fear, and it's an attempt to make racism feel like common sense, to convince the working class that communities, that migrants are the enemy instead of the landlords, instead of the bosses, instead of the billionaires, and we reject that completely. We know the truth. The working class is multiracial. It's Muslim, Christian, Jews, atheist, and many more. It's migrant, it's UK born, it's disabled, it's queer, it's straight, and when we stand together, we are strong, and we're stronger than any fascist group. So remember, when Britain First come tomorrow, they need to see something. They need to see us strong. They need to see us standing together. They need to not see fear, and they need not to see any hesitation, but unity. They need to see us calm, organised, and disciplined. And we don't let them intimidate us. Don't let them divide us. And we do not let them claim our streets, because it is our streets. So beyond tomorrow, we keep building. It's not just about tomorrow, it's about the future as well. We keep building a party that's on the front line against fascism, building the Palestine movement, defending migrants against the far right and against all the hate, and fighting for a world and a future that is beyond capitalism and beyond war. A world that is based on dignity, solidarity, and justice. That is the choice in front of us all. So let's be bold enough to take it, and let's get out there and let's fight for what we believe in. Thank you.
Thank you, Haifa. Next, I'm going to ask Nahella to speak.
Hi, everybody, and thank you firstly to the organisers of tonight's meeting. It's fantastic to be given this opportunity to speak. And can I just say it's music to my ear to hear so many people. I know this is an electoral project, but it's so good that people recognise the importance of building a movement on the streets, particularly when it comes to the far right, because let's be quite honest, there is a connection between the thugs on the street and the politicians like Reform UK and other political parties wanting to shift us all to the right. So yeah, I'm one of the organisers for the Standard Tracum counter demonstration taking place tomorrow in the centre of Manchester. We have called a rally in the centre of Manchester in Piccadilly Gardens for 11:30. Now, You know, a lot of you spoke about the importance of the trade union movement. Well, that demonstration tomorrow is being backed by over 25 trade union branches. So it's about bringing the power of community organisations, but also the organised working class within the trade union movement together to send a clear message of unity and solidarity. And our demonstration, the reason we are having a demonstration in the centre of Manchester is because, you know, there will be hundreds of passers-by going around. It's the focal point of our city centre on a weekend. And we want to be out there very clearly, very public, so everybody can see us. And we want to say, we are not afraid. These are our streets. The city centre belongs to us, working class people. And we are not going to allow the racists to divide us in any way. And it's important we say that, because tomorrow hasn't just been built around left organisations. It's been through the community groups, through faith groups. There's lots of mosques that are supporting it. We have speakers from, as I said, over 25 trade union branches, but also obviously Jeremy Corbyn will be speaking on behalf of your party. We'll have speakers from the Green Party. We'll have members of the Labour Party. Tomorrow is about celebrating our unity and demonstrating also at the same time our diversity and the fact that Manchester is a multicultural community, and actually the working class is multicultural. It's not just Manchester, and it's so important that we come out in mass numbers. They were here last summer, last August, and they outnumbered us. We can't allow that to happen again. And can I say also, it was an absolute disgrace that when they came last time, they were allowed to have a rally in St. Peter's Square, you know, a square that is a focal point for the left in Manchester. Now, I'm really proud to say that we've ensured that they don't take that central location. They aren't going to be in St. Peter's Square this year, but actually it's not acceptable that they're coming to our city anyway. So we need to make sure we have mass numbers in the centre of Manchester tomorrow. And that's why it's important that people come out in Piccadilly Gardens. It's very central. You can't really walk around the city centre without spotting our demonstration. And we want as many people to join that demonstration. And we want everyone walking past to understand why we're there, and to say to those people, come and join us. The anti-racist movement is made up of black and white people, young and old people, people of faith, people of no faith. You don't have to be a tough person running around in a mass to beat the fascists. We are going to beat the fascists by mere numbers and unity. And that's what tomorrow is about. We have to outnumber them so that we, you know, don't necessarily push them off streets physically, although I'm up for doing that, but we can humiliate them enough to not want to come back. And it's important we do this because we're running into the by-election, which takes place on Thursday. I don't have to tell this audience how important that by-election is. It isn't just about a local constituency. The result of that by-election will resonate nationally. If tomorrow's demonstration, if the far right are confident on the back of tomorrow's demonstration, it will give the confidence for the far right and the racists in the constituency come out in numbers and vote. We want to smash that confidence. It matters what we do on the streets. It has an impact, not just on the streets, but in the electoral space as well. So I'm going to put out a call. If you're around tomorrow, please join us in Piccadilly Gardens at 11:30. We want a massive show of unity and a celebration of working class communities, and they are black and white, and we are not going to allow anyone to divide us in any way. Because let's be honest, what are Britain first talking about? They're talking about deporting over 10 million of us. How are they going to pick those 10 million? I tell you how they're going to pick those 10 million. They're going to pick it based on the colour of someone's skin. So it means people like me are not welcome in this country. Well, I like to know how they're going to deport me or where they're going to deport me to, because I am born and bred Mancunian and I'm not going anywhere. And tomorrow is about sending that clear message that we are the majority. We can no longer afford to be the silent majority. We can also no longer afford to be the divided majority. We have to come together with the strength of the trade union movement, the strength of every political party that is against racism, or claims to be against racism. Put your actions, put your words into actions, and come out on Piccadilly Gardens tomorrow. Celebrate that unity and send a clear message that we are the majority. We are going to push the fascists off the street. We have a proud history of doing it. We've done it in the past. We'll do it again. We have a world to win and we can do this. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Nahella. And finally, we will have Zarah.
Thank you so much. Apologies for running slightly late. I've just come back from Bronzefield, where Kesser, Zahra, and Harley, two of the Filton 24, were released today, on bail after over 15 months on remand without a single, conviction to their name. So today is a great day, and I'm glad to be joining you this evening. Firstly, thank you to the organisers. The topic, socialism or barbarism, couldn't be more pertinent. That is the choice before us here in Britain in 2016. We're the sixth richest country in the world, but we have nurses using food banks, renters handing half of their wages to landlords, energy giants posting record profits while pensioners choose between heating and eating. A country where we see war raging abroad and our politicians lining up behind it, beating the war drums, where our planet burns and corporations call it opportunity. This is barbarism under a capitalist system that will calmly sacrifice human need for private profit, where people in our communities experience hardship, the lowest living standards on record, where wages fall and communities are hollowed out. Yet what do we see from our political class? Just scapegoats. Migrants, refugees, the disabled, trans people, the poor. Tomorrow in Manchester, as every speaker's mentioned, the far-right organisation Britain First plan to march. They want headlines and they want division. They want working class people blaming each other instead of directing our anger and our energy towards the real source of our problems. But Manchester has a very vibrant, different tradition, a tradition of solidarity, of trade union struggle, of anti-fascist resistance. And I hope that those who can will turn out tomorrow, because racism thrives where hope collapses. And we know that the real antidote to fascism is working class power. We also know that you can't defeat the far right by ignoring them. You can't defeat the far right by copying them like the Labour Party. And you can't defeat them by chasing their voters with just, watered down prejudice. You defeat the far right by transforming people's lives, by making them materially better, by building homes, by raising wages, by strengthening unions, by putting wealth and power back in the hands of the majority. And that means confronting the truth that capitalism is not malfunctioning, it is working exactly as designed. This is an economy where billionaires multiply their fortunes while millions struggle. This is not broken, it is working, and that's why it is not enough just to tinker around the edges. You cannot fix systemic inequality through just a wealth tax. You cannot regulate away exploitation. This is an economy built on profit, and we need to create one based on need. That is socialism. Putting democracy in every workplace, in every community, in every corner of life. An internationalist and rooted in working class life. And that's why the party that we're building together is so important. A democratic, member-led socialist party that belongs to its members, that belongs to its branches, where policy is shaped from below, where our members are empowered and not managed. And that's what these CEC elections are all about. It's not about individuals, it's about ideology and what direction this party is to go in. Will we become a Labour 2.0? Or will we be a party that is run by its members, accountable to its branches and rooted in working class struggle? And we know that members are often treated as a resource, as an inconvenience, not decision makers. You're asked to campaign, to fundraise, to stuff letters, to mobilise, but locked out of real power. That has to stop. And that's why the grassroots left slate is pledging on day one to recognise your branches, give you access to membership data and access to resources. Because branches are the backbone of our party. I've been really lucky to travel up and down the country and meet so many people organising in proto branches. But without recognition, you can't organise properly. Without membership data, you cannot plan. You can't communicate. You can't build campaigns. You definitely can't select candidates to run in local elections. Without funding, you're expected to pay for the leaflets, for the venues, for the campaigns out of your own pockets. And in Manchester, we see the consequences of this failure. If branches in Manchester had been recognised, if they had access to the membership data, if they received resources from the centre, then your party members there would have been able to select a your party candidate, a socialist, anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist candidate for Gorton and Denton. It didn't happen, and that cannot be allowed to happen again. And that's why electing a new CEC is how we ensure that doesn't happen again. We are pledging immediate branch recognition, full access to membership data, and at least 50% of membership subs going directly to your branches. So democracy is real, so you can organise. And this party is the political home for all working class people and all socialists. We are not here to divide the left. We are not here for a culture of expulsions, of briefings to the right-wing press, of smears, intimidation, and lawfare. We are here to unite the left. And we also recognise that the same forces that scapegoat Muslims and refugees are the same people scapegoating trans people and disabled people. The same forces that attack migrants attack trade unionists. And we can't fight for one community while leaving others behind. As socialists, solidarity isn't an option. An attack on one is an attack on all. So if you want to put members in charge, if you want your branches recognised, funded and equipped to fight, then you have to vote for the grassroots left slate. And you only have until Monday at 5 p.m. You've heard from our brilliant candidates, Haifa and Chloe, who represent the leadership that we need, accountable, principled and rooted in our communities and our struggles. And if we're serious about socialism, we have to practice democracy ourselves in our party. And, you know, there is so much to be hopeful for. I know we're talking about the rise of the far right, but across the country, we see workers, including in Coventry and across the West Midlands through the NEU and the fight against Arthur Terry Academy, winning disputes through strike action. We see communities resisting evictions, campaigners forcing this government to U-turn. And we've seen, you know, the most glorious of victories with the judicial review looking into the ban on Palestine Action, saying it was unlawful. We've seen Palestine Action prisoners released, and these victories are victories that we should celebrate, because change does not begin in Parliament. It begins when the working class organise. And that's what you're doing in Manchester. You're building branches, you're supporting picket lines, you're protesting for Palestine, you're fighting fascists, and you're defending tenants. Because ultimately, socialism will not be delivered from above, it will be built from below. So please join the anti-fascist mobilisation tomorrow in Manchester Piccadilly Gardens against Britain First, because we're not just opposing hate, we're defending the idea that the working class is of people of every race, every faith and every background, that we share a common interest, and that we are building a political vehicle that is capable of turning that unity into power. So get involved in your party, vote in these important CEC elections for the grassroots left slate, organise in your workplace, be in the streets tomorrow, because nothing was ever handed to us. Every right, every protection, every gain has been fought for. And so it does come ultimately to the title of this meeting, Socialism or Barbarism. And comrades, we know which side we're on, solidarity.
Thanks very much, Zarah. Next, we will be opening up the floor for contributions from contributions on the floor. I can already see a couple of people have raised their hands. So I will start with Paul. I think you're muted, Paul, at the moment. I still can't hear you. I've asked you to unmute.
Here we go. Does that help?
There we are.
Got me now. Yes. I'm sorry about that. I have an extra device, but it's not functioning right. My name is Paul Gerard, and I am a supporter, like Tom, of Socialist Alternative. I live in Manchester. I will be on the demonstration against the fascists tomorrow, but I'm afraid I'm not going to be in Piccadilly Gardens. I'm going to be in Sackville Street, and I'm going to explain why. I have for years loyally attended demonstrations called by Nahella. I am really glad she's had an opportunity to speak tonight. I think the grassroots left people should be congratulated for giving her that opportunity. It's important that we debate these things out. But I've always supported the SUTR demonstrations, although I had strong reservations about the politics of the way in which they were called. And my argument was, well, I don't really agree with having Labour Party speakers on the platform and Greens and anybody and faith, so-called faith leaders, because I don't think they're going to be effective. But the SUTR do get the people out on the streets. And I'm afraid that ceased to be the case last autumn. It's a sad state of affairs, but the SUTR are not capable of raising the numbers that we require now. And I'm sorry, Nahella, you're playing the numbers game, saying we're going to outnumber people. It's not actually about numbers. It's about the political basis on which you organize things. And as Tom Costello said earlier on, if we know that socialism is the solution to the problems of the working class, but if you're not part of the solution, you're going to be part of the problem. And that is the case with Green councillors that have broken bin strikes in cities where they've been in the administration. It's the case with Labour councillors that have imposed austerity. I see that there are Green and Labour councillors on the programme tomorrow. And I think that's disappointing. We need a class-based policy, like Chloe said. And I think that's the only way that we're going to be able to peel potential reform voters away. And there's loads of people out there who don't even vote at the moment. And I believe they would be susceptible to socialist policies that would answer their questions. I've been campaigning against racism all my life. And I remember being on Salford Precinct, being told by a woman, black people, asylum seekers are getting everything. Why can't my daughter get a council house? We should be able to answer that woman and say, we could build 1 million council houses a year, but that would mean nationalising the banks. It would mean nationalising the construction industry. Those are the honest policies that would be an answer to that woman and others, and to stop them voting reform. I believe YP has a tremendous opportunity to be a focal point for that, not just against racism, but for socialism and the kind of thing that people need to hear. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Paul. Next up will be Martin. I think you're still muted. Yeah, I'm just trying to sort this.
Thank you. I had to wait for the little button to pop up. Yeah, Martin Empson. I'm in Manchester. I'm part of the Rusholme Proto Branch, though I totally hate the term Proto Branch, and I'm a member of Socialist Worker. I actually wanted to start with a quote from the Communist Manifesto that Marx and Engels said that all is solid that melts into air. And if you look at the polls for Gorton and Denton today, it certainly feels like that, isn't it? The established parties are collapsing. I think Labour is looking like it's going to get 16 or 17% of the votes, alongside exactly the same level as those people who say they're definitely not voting, and the Green Party are about 3%, I think, ahead. It is all falling apart. We got former princes being arrested for the first time since 1647, and it's in this context, of course, that the far right is trying to get itself into the space that they can grow and develop, and I think that is obviously a great worry. And the left has a job to think about how both we challenge the far right, how we push them back numerically off the streets, how we make it difficult for them to organise, but also how, as the top table speaker said, we raise the sort of politics that can undermine their base. And I think that principled anti-racism and the principled anti-racist mobilisation combined with that level of politics is important. And I don't think we have to look too far back to learn how to do that. I mean, I think one of the best examples of pushing back the right at the moment comes from Minneapolis. I think where you saw a combination of working class community organisation beginning to come together with trade unions and workplace organisation to put large numbers of people on the streets, but also to show solidarity and support for those who were facing attacks from ICE and deportation and so on and so forth. And I think we can all learn, whatever our organisation, whatever our experience, we can all learn a little bit from from those movements. And I do want to defend my comrade from Stamp to Racism, partly because I think the model of Stamp to Racism, which is to build a mass movement and to utilize those figures on the left, though we may not agree with them, people in the Green Party or people in the Labour Party, to create a space where we can mobilize large numbers, because numbers do matter, at the same time as having an argument about the most militant form of action that we need. And I think your party has to think about it in this context, because I think your party members should be in Piccadilly Gardens tomorrow, not just because Nahella's organising, because it's Stamp to Racism, but that's where most of the organised trade union movement is going to be. And I think your party activists we aren't just people who are going to turn up to demos. We have to be the people who are going to go to the demos and have an argument with the people carrying the Unison banner or the NEU banner or the, I don't know, PCS banner, that they should join your party and that they should be part of building that. That it's great that they've come out to fight the racists, but actually we need to fight the racist system. We need to stop deportations. We need to challenge the racism of Labour and so on. So I think that's the task in some ways tomorrow. Yes, we want people out on the streets, but we also want your party members going out and building your party and taking on these political arguments in a very real way. So I think that's the strategy for it. And in terms of what we do in Gorton and Denton, I think it's a tragedy that we don't have a left candidate. I mean, I hope the Green Party person defeats Labour, but we have to be serious and recognise the limitations of Green Party politics, and we have to make sure that it doesn't happen again. We don't have an election in a working class area in one of the biggest multicultural cities in the country where your party doesn't have a candidate. That has to be something that we fight for. So I hope the grassroots left win. I hope that we're mobilising for the last few days to get the vote out. I hope people are going to come out on the streets tomorrow, not just as participants, but as activists trying to shape the future of the left. And I will leave it there, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Martin. Next up is Robert Claridge.
Yeah, I would agree on one point with the previous speaker about the importance of what's happened in Minneapolis and by extension throughout the United States, particularly in places like Los Angeles or California, San Francisco. And that is, we've seen a very creative working class movement, an uprising of the working class, led by people of colour, who have used all sorts of creative ideas in a battle against state racism. And this is, to me, crucial. State racism is the fundamental enemy of the working class. Now, it's all very well talking about Farage and the threat of the far right, but I've not heard speakers really reference the threat that the Labour government presents to migrants, to asylum seekers at this point in time. Labour boasts about 50,000 deportations. And I have to disagree, particularly with Zarah Sultana, when she says that Labour copies Reform UK. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's always been a racist party. It's always implemented immigration controls, which in an imperialist country like this are absolutely racist through and through. It has created a whole apparatus, and that is the threat, particularly now, to the migrants, to asylum seekers, and to refugees. And if we don't prioritize the fight against state racism, then you're not actually fighting those who call themselves the far right. You're actually making a concession to the state and therewith to the Labour government and to Labour Party spokesmen. I judge people, I'm from Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism, not by what they say, but what they do. And I'm not interested in Labour councillors or Labour MPs getting up and saying how much they want love and hope for the future when they remain in this imperialist, racist, genocidal party. If they had any guts, any political principles, they would leave forthwith. And I've never subscribed to the view that somehow Labour MPs are able to mobilise people. I heard it 50 years ago in the Irish freedom struggle and the solidarity movement, and it was bollocks then, and it remains that now. These people have no place in the fight against state racism because they support a government which is committed to it. Our priority priority has to be to learn from what's happened in the US. They have prioritized the fight against state racism. Our ICE equivalents in this country, the border agency, well, that's what we have to start to mobilize against. They're the priority. They're the ones who really threaten the existence of migrants in this country. And, people are getting terrified now because, you don't know whether you're a resident now anymore. Yet this is Labour policy. There's not Reform who's doing this. Reform can't lock up people in detention centres, and nor can it deport 10,000 people. They just represent an alternative strategy for the ruling class in waiting when Labour fails. But the priority has to be the fight against state racism. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Robert. Next up will be Khaled.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we hear.
Hello, I'm Khaled from Liverpool with the Socialist Task Force and a number of organisations. I'm on the organising committee for Merseyside Stand Up to Racism, and I'm also on the organising committee for the Together Alliance. And in the Liverpool City region, over the last couple of weeks, the Together Alliance in the Liverpool City region has repeatedly refused to back my calls to publicise this counter-march we have this weekend. What is the point in having a Together Alliance and having a coalition if we can't pool our resources, use this network to gather as many people to get out on the streets? I'm also with Stand Up to Racism, Merseyside Stand Up to Racism. I'm quite possibly the person who's arguing the most for them in Liverpool, but I'm absolutely ashamed of Stand Up to Racism repeatedly refusing my request to back our action this weekend because other anti-fascist action groups have initiated and went first. Not only have they not supported this action, but they've tried to bury it completely by promoting actions last week and promoting actions next week and promoting some stupid action by Wrexham anti-fascists this weekend, because every anti-fascist in the Northwest should be on the city of Manchester. No one should come back at me today. Please just bring this up in the next organising meeting for the Together Alliance or in Merseyside Stand Up to Racism. But if there's anyone in the Together Alliance or Stand Up to Racism throughout the country, please use your influence to let them know that we are only going to beat the far right if we stop using these alphabet organisations and this tribalistic attitude in the left, and we put your party first and the fight against the far right even before your party. I'm with Stand Up to Racism, and I asked my family, my mum, my sister, to go with Stand Up to Racism, but I won't be at Piccadilly Gardens tomorrow. The far right are emboldened because of the political climate and the mainstream media, and they're not bothered about walking past people who are kettled and do what the police told. I won't be going out for trouble tomorrow, but I will be joining Merseyside Anti-Fascist Alliance, Merseyside Anti-Fascist Network, Socialist Task Force, here to stay, here to fight. We will be joining Manchester Anti-Fascists, and we will be at Sackville Gardens, and we'll be putting our bodies between us and these racist fascists and make it as hard as possible, impossible for them to walk our streets freely. I would ask the grassroots left to use all your resources to get people to Sackville Gardens. And today, rather than talking about things going forward, we should all be using our resources today, not sat on our arse, no disrespect, speaking on the computer, but using every resource we have to get numbers on our street. Because the most important thing we do tonight is to get as many numbers on the streets for tomorrow. That is what we need. And there's not one way to fight the far right. It's a multifaceted approach. If there was one way to do it, we would all be doing the same thing. So I support anyone who's at Piccadilly Gardens, and I support anyone who's doing anything in the movement, but I would plead just to come to Sackville Gardens and put ourselves between us and these fascists and make it as hard as possible. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Card. Next up will be Kim.
Okay, hi. So I'd just like to say, first of all, solidarity with Candy Williams, Salma Ahmed, and anyone else that has been disgracefully targeted just for the colour of their skin and them being a woman. I'm female presenting, but I would like to say that using my privilege of being white, I will call out racism wherever and whenever I can.
I come from an area in South Birmingham, in case you didn't guess from the accent, where the Raise the Flags originally started. I always like to preface that not everyone from South Birmingham is a flag shagger. But I just wanted to first of all send solidarity to everyone that will be out in Manchester tomorrow. I see Manchester like a second home. I very nearly moved up that way until I had a health scare and all that, but that's the story for another time. But also there is UKIP Nick Tenconi that is going to be mobilising in Birmingham tomorrow towards Hodge Hill Way. I know that area quite well. One of my ex-girlfriends used to live down that way, and they're mobilising near, funnily enough, a pub that we used to go to a lot. What was it? Fox and Goose. So I strongly encourage. I'm going to preface now. Unfortunately, I'm unable to be out on the streets tomorrow. I already pre-booked something with a relative before they got discharged from hospital before Christmas. Otherwise, I would be out on the streets. So, whether for people on here or tuning in on YouTube, if you know people in and around Birmingham and not able to get to Manchester tomorrow, I strongly encourage getting numbers out in Birmingham, because we are a very proud multicultural city. And just like comrades have said with Manchester, we are not going to allow these far-right thugs to march on our streets. I said this when the pogroms happened in August 2024. I am a proud, disabled, gender fluid lesbian. I will not allow these people that claim that they care about our country to pinpoint like target the Muslim community, the black and brown community, and not just that, the trans community, because like Zara has stated, injury to one is injury to all. And yeah, I also encourage as well, if people doing this already, like promoting the Together Alliance 28th of March. I one of the co-founders for LGBTQIA Your Party. I'm proudly supporting it, and I'm hoping, depending finances are all well, fingers crossed, the joys of the benefit system, trying to work out the cost for banners. I am hoping to, fingers crossed, have a Your Party LGBTQIA plus banner. I'll keep people updated, but yes, solidarity. And if you're in the West Midlands, please vote for Graham Jones and Megan Clark, and solidarity with the rest of the grassroots left. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim, and thank you particularly for bringing up the what is going on in Birmingham with UKIP. That's something I was completely unaware of. It's much appreciated. Before I bring Marcus in, I'm also going to ask if anyone has any questions to give to the directly to the speakers. That would be particularly much appreciated. But yeah, I'll bring in Marcus now.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Marcus. My pronouns are he, him. And look, I want to talk about anti-fascist strategy and what tomorrow can mean for our movement, right? Because there's kind of two possible outcomes for tomorrow. There's a large number of outcomes, but if we think about what we're trying to achieve with tomorrow, I think it could lead in a couple of different directions. One is that we deny Britain first, the city, which obviously I think everybody involved is desperate to do. We want to stop these fascists from building an audience in our city, and I think it's absolutely imperative that we do so. If we stop there, though, if we stop at just denying Britain first their audience, then I think that we've missed a big opportunity tomorrow. So the reason why I'm going to the Piccadilly Gardens demo is because I want to be part of building a movement that scales beyond just Manchester and scales beyond the demonstration tomorrow into something bigger, into a vibrant, trade union-backed, social weight-backed, community organization-backed movement that mobilizes the expanded anti-fascist network, everybody who's threatened by or pissed off at fascists, to really be part of the fight back against the Nazis. Look, I take the point that not everybody on the Stand Up to Racism platform tomorrow is going to be a hardened socialist or a revolutionary, as much as I would love for them to be. I think the reality is that to build the kind of mass movement that we want, that we need to fight back the fascists at the moment in the political reality that we're in, we have to work with forces that we don't fully agree with everything on. We have to engage the people who see the far right as a threat, who see fascism as a problem, and may have slightly different strategies for how to beat them than we do, but ultimately are willing to be part of the fight and are willing to mobilize their numbers in fighting back the fascists, which is why, as Nahella said, the demonstration tomorrow has, I think, the largest trade union and community organization backing of anti-racist demos in history. I mean, maybe not the extended history of Manchester, but certainly of recent history. And I think that's indicative of the fact that a lot of people have been drawn in and want to fight back against the fascists. So I think it's really important that we spend the time tomorrow, that we go to Piccadilly Gardens, we talk to the people to the right of us, we talk to the people, we have that patient but determined argument with the trade unions present, with the campaign groups present, with the faith leaders present, and that we say to them, look, we may not agree with everything, but come to Gorton and Denton and help us beat the far right in Gorton and Denton. Come to the Unity Rally for Together in Manchester on the 8th of March, and let's build a movement that can field the largest possible mobilization to the 28th of March. And of course, come to the demonstration on the 28th of March. Because if you're willing to show up for what is a fairly hardcore activity, a counter demonstration against fascist boot boys, then you should definitely come to London for the 28th of March. So I'm for working with the social weight that we've accumulated. I'm for working with the largest possible coalition of working class organizations to field massive anti-racist resistance, rather than just a clique of socialists who mobilize existing left forces. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Marcus. I will next hand over to Bob Shepherd.
Hi there. Yeah, what is really interesting from some of these comments is it seems like there's a complete lack of reality. We have the Gorton and Denton by-election taking place. Labour is going to get decimated. All across the working class, people are completely disillusioned, opposed to the Labour government and the Labour Party. And yet, the Stand Up to Racism and SWP speakers seem determined to have Labour politicians on the platform, as somehow this is going to build this mass anti-racist movement that they say we need, that we certainly do need. We need a movement. But we can't build a movement that is tied politically to the dead weight of the Labour Party. I mean, to me, it just it beggars belief that actually, as Nahella said, on tomorrow, there could well be Labour councillors speaking on the platform in Piccadilly Gardens. I mean, if you want to drive people, working class people, towards the far right, then go ahead. That's one way of doing it. The idea, as well, that somehow the trade union movement is mobilising en masse to support the demonstration, again, is a sort of step away from reality. We have to be realistic about what's happening in the country at the moment, what's happening in Britain, what's happening within the working class. Yes, we need a movement. We need a movement that breaks completely with the Labour Party, that breaks completely with a party that can boast about deporting more than 50,000 people in its term in office, that is enacting more and more racist laws, that is engaged in all manner of attacks on the working class, a party that supports on all different levels the genocide that has taken place in Gaza, a party that supports the kidnapping of the democratically elected president of Venezuela and his partner, a party that will support the US's attack on Iran. You know, to build a movement, we need, first of all, to break with the Labour Party and to recognise that it is state racism that we have to confront. The fact is that the far right live and breathe because of state racism. And, you know, people have been talking about Minneapolis. The Minneapolis movement hasn't sort of targeted and put as a main enemy Proud Boys or the far right. They know quite clearly that the main enemy is state racism. And those are the sort of lessons that we need to learn to build the movement in this country. Thank you, comrades.
Thanks very much, Bob. I think it was a really important point there at the end about state-backed racism. I will now be handing over to the speakers to respond to the various points that the comrades have made. I'll begin first with Chloe.
Thanks. Yeah, I think first of all, really productive and useful contributions, very interesting, and thank you to everyone who spoke. And it does speak to the fact that there is this discussion in our movement that I've been a part of throughout my history in organising in anti-fascist spaces about the tactics and the strategy that we want to use. And it's appreciated that people have kept it comradely, because this is the kind of discussion that we're going to need to have in our party and that we need to have across our movement. And I hope that we can continue to have that discussion in a fully democratic party that values the voices of all of its members. And that's the kind of party that the Grassroots Left is trying to build. And I have to agree with some of the criticisms of stand-up to racism and of the way in which we organize in general as anti-fascists. It's not just stand up to racism, of course, who can be criticized in this way. I think overall there is a tendency for our movement to be very reactive, not proactive. We tend to call counter demos, right? But we're never calling demos. It's always the far right who seem to be leading us around in a sense, and we're always showing up to oppose them. And of course, it's absolutely necessary to do that. We have to show up every time. We have to kick them off the streets, and I really hope that tomorrow that's what will happen. But we have to be serious about change. We have to organize. We have to recognize that if we've gotten to the point where the far right are showing up week in, week out, and we're having to show up and oppose them every week, that there's something going wrong there. And so we have to do the groundwork. We don't just need to be showing up to demos, we need to be actually going into communities and building solidarity and building a base for our politics that will show up in much greater numbers. Now, I want to respond to a couple of specific points. There was a point made about the trade unions having a strong presence in Piccadilly Gardens. That may absolutely be true, but I think there is it's important not to view this event as a recruitment exercise for the party, or indeed a networking event where we can go out and talk to the trade unions. That needs to be done, right? But this needs to be done elsewhere. It needs to be done in trade union branches. It needs to be done by having a dialogue between our party and our movement and the trade unions through, for instance, the rank and file workers movement commission that the Grassroots Left would set up with the majority on the on the CEC. We need to also, I absolutely agree with the points critical of the Labour Party and their involvement with the anti-fascist movement. It's sort of, I think it's kind of ridiculous to have Labour politicians speaking at anti-fascist demos or being perceived as part of a united front against the far right. Let's be clear, the Labour Party acts like it is part of the far right. It is implementing authoritarian policy that goes after trans people, that goes after migrants and refugees, that goes after Muslims and members of minority communities. And it may be true that the Labour Party can attract some people to a demonstration, but we have to also think about the cost that there is to being perceived as a movement of which the Labour Party is a part. Many, many people across our country and in our class and in the communities that we want to organise and in the movements that we want to organise hate the Labour Party. I know that I do. I have no trust for them. And I've seen in real time a breakdown in solidarity between the anti-fascist movement on the one hand and Palestine solidarity movement on the other hand, in local organising spaces, because the former were willing to invite the Labour Party councillors to speak at their events. And that's an issue. We need to be building solidarity between, in this example, the Palestine solidarity movement and the anti-fascist struggle, because we have the same enemy. And unfortunately, moves to invite the Labour Party in, they do have a cost, and they do harm to that solidarity that we need to build. So I think that working with Labour should be a big no-no. I don't think that we can afford to do that, and I think we need to take a strong stance against Labour and against the state that they are running. The last thing I'll say is that we need to be organising in a way that treats the state as an adversary. We can't be relying upon the state and the police to be defending us and to be defending our communities and our class, because that, for one, that creates a tendency to rely upon the police, which prevents the formation of more militant potential to go out and take more militant action that is necessary to drive the fire out of the streets. And also politically, it makes no sense. We're the socialist movement, and this is the capitalist state, right? We shouldn't be relying upon the state to defend ourselves. We should be going forward with the strong principle that we defend ourselves, no one else, because that's what happened in August 2024, right? The police were unable to stop the riots, but we stopped the riots. We came out and we put an end to the fascist terror in that moment. That's what we need to do going forward, not just on the streets, but also by working through our communities and working in the trade unions and in the halls of power.
Thanks very much, Chloe. Next, I will bring in Tom.
Great. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, so thanks for the contributions and discussion, comrades. Like I said earlier on, it is very, very important that we're, having this discussion now and tying it into a discussion about what your party needs to be doing in the fight against the fascists and against the far right. Yeah, there's obviously been like a very useful debate on like tactics, what kind of anti-racist movement do we need to build, which is definitely, a worthwhile debate and discussion that needs to be had. I guess before I say anything else, I just want to echo some of what, I was saying before in my introduction, as well as what Zarah was saying about how a vote for grassroots left in these CEC elections isn't just about democracy in your party. It is about that, and that's extremely important. But the point is, we need democracy in your party, so your party is able to play the role that it needs to play in the fight against the far right, against state racism, against deportations, against austerity, for Palestinian liberation, and so on. Because I think one of the key things that many of us will, it'll have dawned on us. One of the key things that your party needs to do now is it needs to be able to turn outwards, onto the picket lines, onto the Palestine demonstrations, because of course, if you were to look at what the media would say about your party now, it's overwhelmingly negative. That'll always be the case. The capitalist media isn't on our side. But to be able to demonstrate that your party is there in struggle, is leading struggle, is connecting the fight against the fascists to class struggle demands and so on, will be extremely important. But we can't do that anywhere near as much as we'd like to and we need to if we continue to have a top-down structure without democratic rights for the branches and so on. So I would really just kind of reiterate, the point about the need to vote for the grassroots left, because it's about making sure that we can actually turn the party outwards and reach, the hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people who would agree with a lot of what your party's saying and can be won over, and we can build a mass socialist party that's desperately needed. Yeah, I guess just the last thing as well is I'd want to kind of like go back to what I think is one of the main takeaways from these kinds of discussions, which is not just having your party members on demos against the far right as individuals. I mean, I get the impression that there's already some plans in Manchester to have like a conscious your party presence, having your party banners and so on. That's extremely important. And I think that the thing I was raising earlier on about the need for a your party block on the 28th of March is absolutely not too late to make that a reality. It definitely can be done. And if grassroots left wins, that will turbocharge that, because it's about having the party as a campaigning force, not just at election times, but outside of the elections as well. So yeah, I'd just say let's make that a reality. Let's make the Your Party block a reality, and to have the kind of, class struggle demands, but also to provide an example of the kind of struggle against the far right that's needed, that we haven't had for a long time, which is connecting the fight for the interests of the working class to the fight against the racists, because the two are just so intimately connected. So yeah, I'll stop speaking there. I think the main thing is let's make this Your Party block a reality, because that would be a huge step forward for showing the kind of party of struggle that we do need. So yeah, that's all from me.
Thanks very much, Tom. I will now hand over to Nahella.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for that discussion. It's been really useful. I just do want to add a couple of things. One is this perception somehow that if you're meeting in Sackville Garden, somehow you are going to be standing, or your body is going to be confronting the far right. There's no reason to assume that because you're in Sackville Gardens that you're going to be anywhere near where the far right are. So it's really important to say that you know what I mean? They're not going to march past Sackville Gardens for you to then. I think what would have been more useful is the two demonstrations could come together and say, right, we are going to march together to where the far right are going to try rallying and stop them from rallying there. I think that would be a real sense of unity. I just want to say that. The other thing I want to say also is this question around work with people in the Labour Party. Standard Tourism does work with people across the board. We don't write people off just because they are part of a political party. In fact, when Jeremy Corbyn and Zarah Sultana were members of the Labour Party, we were proud to have them on our platforms because we recognise that individually they didn't share the same values of the wider Labour Party, and they were working hard to shift it to the left. Now, we all have our opinions on where that went, but it's worth saying that we don't write them all off. And actually, for those people that say, actually, thousands of people attend their backs on the Labour Party, that is true. That is absolutely true. But actually, there are always still thousands of people that are still voting the Labour Party. And we can't write off the people that vote for the Labour Party. I think that would be a massive disservice to the working class. And I think actually it would also be a massive disservice to write off the trade union movement as well, as some people here have said. We have worked hard to get the trade unions to back the demonstration tomorrow. It's important we do, because actually we need to shift the trade union movement. We know that the power of the working class is the organised working class within the trade union movement, and we have to play our parts as activists to shift that organisation, to shift it to the left, to say to the trade union people, bureaucrats, you can make a difference. Your members want to make a difference, and actually, many of the people on that demonstration that will be in Piccadilly Gardens will be members of the trade union movement, and they will not understand this idea that actually the trade unions don't do anything and they just put their logos on a placard, on a flyer, because actually a lot of those members will be out there. They will be out there as trade union activists. They will be out there as groups on workplaces with their work banners and all the rest of it. And we should celebrate that and build on it rather than knock it down. So those are those key two big things. The other thing I want to say is, actually, isn't it fantastic to have this meeting and to be talking about the importance of building a movement on the ground? And I think it would go so far if you could have an anti-racist, a Your Party block on the 28th of March. I think that would be fantastic, because there's a lot to do. It's not just about stopping the far right on the streets as it is when we confront the Britain First tomorrow is about all forms of racism, whether it's coming from Britain First, Tommy Robinson, Reform UK or the Labour Party. We need a mass mobilisation where our side is the majority and we are confident. Someone said, you know, stand up to racism has failed because we focus on doing counter demonstrations. That's not true. We are part of the Together Alliance. That's not a counter demonstration. That is a demonstration of unity and strength. That's a demonstration of what working class people in Britain look like. And actually, we haven't confronted the far right outside hotels every single week. We know it. For instance, in parts of Manchester, there are 20 or 30 far right activists that go to the hotel. They don't grow. They're not building a movement,
Nahella,
but
is
they
it okay if you
target a
sum up?
hotel every week. What have we done instead? We have built unity demonstrations in those areas and we have brought local people together. Anti-racist movement can only win if we have mass mobilization that is rooted in the communities. And that's what we do when we have local groups in every area. And I'm proud of the work we do at reaching out into communities and building local groups and empowering them to lead the campaigns. That's what's happening in Gorton and Denton. It's being done locally by people in that area. And that's what we need, a rooted movement that can push back the far right in any of their forms, whether it's the far right or the racist. We need to beat them.
Okay, thank you, Nahella. We'll now hand over to Haifa as the final speaker to sum up.
Thank you. And I just want to thank everyone for their contributions. You know, this is what we need. We need healthy debates like this. It broadens our knowledge and logic, and it's important to have like discussions like this because we get to understand each other more. So I do welcome debates like this. I think they're absolutely needed. I'll just touch on Labour just shortly. I know my comrades already did, Chloe and Tom, but when Labour adapts the language of control, of crackdowns, of stopping the boat, it legitimises the idea that migrants are the problem to be solved rather than people that are just trying to be protected and need that protection. And that shifts the whole political conversation to the far right. And we've seen commitments to maintain hostile border policies, expand detentions, and prioritise enforcement over safe routes. And then when the mainstream media and the mainstream parties echo framing the idea of this and enabling these policies, it normalises scapegoating, and that has real consequences. So it makes asylum seekers feel unsafe, it emboldens racist narratives, and it creates an atmosphere where fascist groups feel confident and protected. And the housing crisis is not caused by refugees. The low wages are not caused by migrants. Collapsed public services are not caused by people fleeing from war. They're caused by privatisation and a system that protects the 1% and the wealthy, basically. And our job is absolutely clear. Migrants and refugees are part of the working class, and you come for one of us, you come for all of us. So we do have to remember that, and that's what Labour is against. Labour is against us. Labour is, in my opinion, practically the same as Reform and Tories. They're literally all the same in my eyes. None of them are for the working class like Labour claim. They are basically the far right at this rate. So we must challenge Labour when it adopts these positions firmly, politically and publicly. And regarding our resources to get people on the streets, yeah, because movements are built on meetings, but they're also built on the streets. They're built on the ground. If fascists can mobilise, we can't respond in silence. We respond with organised, disciplined, collective presence. We stand together strong, and that's how we've won in the past, and we'll do it again and again. Like I said before, in Liverpool, we stopped Tommy Robinson coming out of Lime Street. We stopped UKIP doing their route. We made them walk around St George's Hall 3 times. We've done it once before. We can do it again. So yeah, we will use our resources to get people on the street because that's what matters. We have to fight the fascists, the far right, head on. But it's important that mobilisation is strategic, it's coordinated, and it's rooted in broad unity. Trade unions, community groups, faith group, anti-racist organisations, everyone who shares the same idea as us comes together because it's not about ego or who calls. It's about numbers, it's about disciplines, and it's about clarity of purpose. So about tomorrow, I just want to say solidarity to everyone who goes, and make sure you're all safe. If you can, cover your face if you need to. If you don't need to, feel free not to, but always keep yourself safe. But it doesn't matter where you go, as long as you have the intentions of defeating the far right. Movements sometimes have a tactical disagreements. People will assess risks differently, and some will prefer one location and others prefer another. And that's fine. we're not all going to agree on everything. It's completely normal. We don't have to say the same thing all the time. It's absolutely normal for us to disagree on little things like this. Well, maybe not little things to some people, but little things to other people. So I'll take that back, sorry. But it is absolutely fine to disagree on things as long as we all have the same goal, the same motive. And some people want to prioritize different things. Some people want to prioritize safety. Some people want to prioritize visibility, and some people want to prioritize putting their bodies against the far righters. I think Khaled said you want to be there at the front line, which is great. The far right thrives on fragmentation. They want to see anti-racist organisations arguing with each other. They want to see us disagreeing with each other. They want to see us divided, and that's important, that we can't show them that. We can't show them that we are divided, and we can't show them that we want to argue all the time. We can't. They want us to be confused, and they want the headlines to be about us splitting. So we need to make sure that we are united. Even if we disagree internally, that is absolutely fine, as long as we show outside we are united. We can't give them that satisfaction that we're divided and they're united. Absolutely not. We cannot do that. So whether people decide to gather at Piccadilly Gardens or Piccadilly or Sackville Gardens, whether they decide to march or hold the ground, whether they decide to take any approach, what matters is that we recognise that we're all on the same side. We are united by one objective: to defeat the fascists, defeat the racists, defeat the far right. And we do that confidently and together with solidarity. Solidarity means understanding not everyone will make the same tactical choice, but we respect each other's judgment and we maintain political unity. We don't undermine each other publicly. We do it privately, and we don't question each other's commitments, and we don't let small differences become strategic fractures, because the real test isn't whether we stand all together in the same place. It's the real test is whether we stand together politically before, during, and after tomorrow. And when this is over, we all need to stay together and stay strong. We still need to build against Reform. We need to build against Labour. We need to build against Tory. We need to build against them big political parties that are rising. And we need to defend the migrants, we need to defend the working class, we need to defend the trade unions, we need to defend all those that are targeted by the far right. So we still need to grow this movement. There's still a lot to go, and we're in the beginning stages. So whatever you decide to do tomorrow, do it with your heart, do it with your gut, and do it knowing that your comrades are acting in the same commitment, and do what you feel is right, defeating the far right and defending our communities, and whatever you decide to do, whether that's Piccadilly Gardens, whether that's Sackville Gardens, wherever you decide, as long as you decide yourself and do what's your best. So, and also don't forget the Together Alliance on the 28th of March. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, Haifa. I would echo like much of the points that have just been raised regarding the actions tomorrow, which I'll reiterate again. There is an action at Sackville Street Gardens at 11:45 a.m. Well, yeah, it's convening then, and there is also a action at Piccadilly Gardens at 11:30, starting at 11:30 a.m. I think as somebody going along to the Sackville mobilisation, I think the two mobilisations are actually very complementary in many ways, and hopefully, with coordination and with discipline on the day, we can seriously undermine what is a very concerted effort by Britain First, who will be bringing down the vast majority of their active members to spew their bile and try and present themselves as a strong, organised, and legitimate force in the middle of our city. I will also finally just say, by saying that again, if you haven't done already, please make sure to vote before 5 p.m. on Monday for the two grassroots left candidates in your region, and Zarah Sultana and Grace Lewis as public office holder candidates. If you agree with what is going on in this meeting, I think hopefully, like our speakers, will have very clearly illustrated the necessity for your party built on strong, vibrant branches and is uncompromisingly socialist and anti-fascist. So I'd like to thank the speakers and everyone who has contributed, and I hope everyone has a very good evening. Good night.